Lily sat on the edge of her bed in dinosaur pajamas, the top button done in the wrong hole. She held her stuffed T-Rex so tight its head was smushed flat against her cheek. On the nightstand was the drawing she'd made after we fixed the back fence together last week. 3 stick figures holding hands between our 2 houses. The blue one with the garage door colored exactly the same shade as my truck. She looked at me like she'd been practicing this in her head since dinner and finally couldn't keep it in anymore. "Can you be my mommy forever?" The question landed soft but heavy, the way a hammer lands when you're not expecting it. I closed the book in my lap, even though we were only on page 4. Ethan stood at the sink in his blue scrubs, one hand on the coffee pot, the other rubbing the back of his neck like he could massage the exhaustion out. Lily was at the table drawing another picture, this time of me holding a hammer, because she'd watched me replace their porch step that morning and apparently decided I needed to be documented. He turned around with that half-smile he used when he hated asking for help, but had no other choice left. "Owen, I'm so sorry. They called me in for a double. The new nurse quit, and they're scrambling. Lily already ate. She promised she'd be good if you let her help build one more blanket fort in the living room. I'll be back by 10 latest." I said yes before he finished the sentence. 3 weeks ago, I would have hesitated. Tonight, the word just came out. We'd built the fort with every blanket Ethan owned and 3 of mine from next door. Lily was inside it now, only her sock feet sticking out, telling me a very long story about how T-Rexes were actually good at hide-and-seek. I sat on the floor outside the fort because going inside felt like crossing a line I hadn't asked permission for yet. The only light came from the lamp shaped like a mushroom she'd picked out herself. She went quiet for a minute. Then her voice came from inside the blankets, smaller than before. "Daddy says Mommy lives in heaven now. But you live right next door, so maybe you could, be here instead." I didn't answer right away. The fort smelled like laundry detergent, and the peanut butter sandwich she'd insisted on sharing with me, even though I'd already eaten. Ethan was already in his day-off clothes, faded gray t-shirt and old jeans, standing at the stove flipping pancakes that were slightly too dark on one side. The coffee smelled stronger than usual. Lily sat at the table swinging her legs, still in the same dinosaur pajamas from last night, drawing on the back of an old envelope with a purple crayon. She hadn't mentioned what she'd asked me. Not yet. Ethan turned around with 2 plates and looked at me like he was trying to read something on my face without being obvious about it. "You didn't have to stay all night. I got home at 10:30 and you were still on the couch with the fort half collapsed around you. Thank you. Really." I took the plate he handed me. Our fingers brushed for half a second longer than they needed to. Neither of us moved away first. Ethan stood in the doorway of my garage with his hands in his pockets, watching me cut a piece of pine on the table saw. Lily was on the floor nearby, helping by sorting my screws into different jars, even though she kept mixing up the sizes. He'd come over to ask if I could build a low shelf for Lily's books, because the one they had kept tipping over. I said yes before he finished asking. Sawdust was settling on his dark hair. He didn't brush it off. He just kept looking at my hands like the way I held the wood mattered. "She asked about you at breakfast yesterday. Said you smell like trees and that's her favorite smell now." I didn't know what to tell her. I turned off the saw. The sudden quiet felt louder than the machine had been. Lily was humming to herself, completely unaware she'd just dropped a grenade between us. Ethan had shown up at my door with 2 bottles of beer and a slice of store-bought pie he claimed Lily helped pick out. She was already asleep next door. He looked like a man who needed to be anywhere but inside his own quiet house. We sat on opposite ends of my couch. The only light was the lamp I'd made from an old whiskey bottle. He told me her name was Claire, that she'd been a teacher, that the cancer had been fast and mean, and that Lily didn't really remember her anymore, which somehow made it worse. People keep telling me it's been 4 years. I should start dating again. Like there's an expiration date on grief. I don't even know how to explain to someone that my kid comes first and always will. I wanted to tell him I already knew that I'd seen it every time he looked at her. Instead, I just nodded and took another sip of beer that had gone warm in my hand. We were sitting on the back steps eating burnt hot dogs because Ethan had insisted on grilling even though it started raining halfway through. Lily was at the picnic table under the umbrella, drawing furiously with her tongue stuck out in concentration. She ran over and shoved the paper into Ethan's hands first, then mine. 3 stick figures again. This time we were all holding hands, and there was a big heart over our heads that looked like it had been drawn with extra pressure. That's us. I made the heart because you guys are my favorite people. Ethan didn't say anything for a long moment. Neither did I. The rain tapped on the umbrella above us like it was giving us time to figure out what the hell we were supposed to do with the picture in our hands. Ethan was washing dishes while I dried. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch watching a dinosaur documentary for the 4th time this week. The kitchen smelled like the lemon dish soap he always bought, and the garlic bread we'd burned earlier. We'd started doing this without planning it. One of us cooking, the other cleaning, like we'd been doing it for years instead of a few weeks. His shoulder kept brushing mine when he reached for the next plate. He looked tired, but softer than I'd ever seen him. Like maybe, for the first time in a long time, he wasn't carrying everything alone. You know, she hasn't asked about her mom in months. Not since you started coming around more. I don't know if that's a good thing or if I should be worried. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just kept drying the same plate until it was dry enough to put away twice. Ethan had walked over after Lily went to bed. He said he just needed air, but he'd been sitting on my porch steps for almost an hour without saying much. The only sound was the crickets and the occasional car passing on the main road 3 blocks away. He kept checking his phone like he was waiting for something that didn't come. When it finally buzzed, he looked at the screen, went completely still, then turned it face down on the wood beside him. Some people from my old life are trying to reach me again. I thought they were done. I was wrong. He didn't explain who. I didn't ask, but the way his hands were shaking when he picked up the phone again told me this wasn't about work. Lily was staying at a friend's house for a sleepover. Ethan had asked me to come over anyway, said he needed to tell me something before he lost the nerve. We sat on opposite ends of the couch again, but this time the space between us felt like a canyon. He didn't look at me when he started talking. He looked at the framed photo on the mantel, the one of him and Lily at the beach last summer, both of them laughing with ice cream on their faces. Claire didn't die. She left when Lily was 2, packed a bag while I was at work and just didn't come home. I told Lily her mom was in heaven because I didn't know how to explain that her mother chose to walk away from her. I've been lying to my daughter for 4 years. The words sat in the room like smoke. I could feel them in my lungs. Everything I thought I understood about why Ethan was so careful, so guarded, rearranged itself in my head. Her parents, Claire's parents, found out I've been letting you spend so much time with Lily. They called yesterday. They want to be involved again. They said if I can't give her a proper family, maybe they should. I couldn't sleep. I went out to the garage and started sanding a piece of wood that didn't need sanding. The motion helped. The noise helped more. Ethan had asked me not to say anything to Lily. Not yet. He was still figuring out what to do about her grandparents, about the lie, about the fact that the woman he'd been mourning for 4 years had been alive this whole time. I kept hearing his voice in my head. If I can't give her a proper family. Like the 3 of us building blanket forts and eating burnt hot dogs wasn't already something real. Like what we were becoming didn't count because it didn't look the way other people expected. For the first time since Lily asked me that question in her bedroom, I wondered if I was making everything harder for both of them, just by being here. Ethan stood just inside the door like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to come all the way in. He still had his scrubs on from a double shift, dark circles under his eyes deeper than I'd ever seen. I'd made coffee even though it was too late for it. The pot sat between us on the counter, untouched. He kept looking at the floor instead of at me.
Her grandparents want to meet Lily next weekend. They said they've been patient long enough. I told them I needed time to prepare her. They asked if I was still letting that carpenter spend so much time with her. I didn't know what to say. Finally looked up. His eyes were red at the edges. I knew what was coming before he said it. I think we need to slow down. For Lily. For now. I can't give them any reason to think I'm not putting her first. Lily showed up at my door alone. She was still in her school clothes, one knee sock falling down, holding a piece of paper in both hands like it was something fragile. She didn't say hello. She just held the drawing out to me, the one from the backyard with the big heart over our 3 stick figures. Someone had folded it carefully, then unfolded it again. The crease went right through the middle of my face. Daddy said I can't come over here anymore unless he's with me, but he's always working, so can I just stand here on your porch instead? I crouched down so we were eye level. My throat felt too tight to answer. She was waiting like she actually believed I might have a solution that made sense to a 6-year-old. I'd gone over to return Lily's favorite dinosaur book she'd left in my truck. Ethan answered the door but didn't invite me inside. We stood in the open doorway like strangers. Through the gap, I could see Lily at the kitchen table doing homework. She looked up when she heard my voice, and her whole face lit up for half a second before Ethan gently told her to finish her worksheet. I'm not trying to punish you or her. I spent 4 years building something stable for her. If her grandparents decide to fight me on this, I could lose everything. I can't risk that. Not again. He finally looked at me. The look was worse than anger. It was apology mixed with something that looked a lot like goodbye. You've been really good to us, Owen. Maybe that's all this was supposed to be. I was sanding the same board for the 3rd time. The wood was smooth enough to eat off of, but I kept going anyway. My hands knew what to do, even when my head didn't. The half-finished birdhouse Lily had asked me to make for the backyard still sat on the workbench. I promised her it would have a little porch so the birds could sit and talk like we do. I hadn't touched it in days. I kept hearing Ethan's voice on a loop. Maybe that's all this was supposed to be. Like the late-night talks, the burnt hot dogs, the way Lily fell asleep against my side on the couch. Like none of it had meant what I thought it meant. For the first time, I let myself wonder if walking away now would hurt her less than letting her get used to having me and then watching me disappear the way her mother had. Maybe Ethan was right. Maybe I was the complication he couldn't afford. The birdhouse was finished. I'd painted the little porch Lily wanted, even added a tiny bench made from leftover trim. It looked ridiculous and perfect at the same time. I'd spent the last 4 days telling myself to respect Ethan's boundaries, to be the neighbor who helped when asked and stayed away when he needed space. But every time I looked at this stupid birdhouse, I heard Lily asking if she could just stand on my porch instead. I turned off the work light, picked up the birdhouse, and walked out into the dark before I could talk myself out of it. The porch light was still on. Ethan answered on the second knock, barefoot, in the same gray t-shirt he'd worn the night he told me the truth about Claire. He looked like he hadn't slept much either. He didn't ask why I was there. He just stepped back and let me inside like he'd been expecting me eventually. She's asleep. I told her grandparents I'd bring Lily to meet them next weekend. They want to talk about long-term arrangements. I think they're going to push for more time with her. Maybe even custody. I set the birdhouse down on his kitchen table. It looked too bright and hopeful in the dim room. Ethan stared at the birdhouse like it was something dangerous. His hands were gripping the back of a chair so hard, his knuckles had gone white. I didn't sit down. I stayed standing on the other side of the table because if I got any closer, I might lose the nerve to say what I came here to say. I'm not here to make this harder for you. I know what they're threatening. I know you're scared of losing her the way you already lost Claire. But I'm not going to disappear just because it's easier for them to pretend I don't exist. Owen, I'm not asking you to pick me over Lily.
I would never ask that. I'm asking you to let me stand next to you when they come. I'm asking you to stop acting like what we've been building these last few weeks isn't real just because it doesn't look like what her grandparents want.
The kitchen was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming. Ethan's eyes were wet. He didn't wipe them. He finally let go of the chair. For a second, I thought he was going to ask me to leave. Instead, he walked around the table and stopped right in front of me. I told myself I was protecting her. But the truth is, I was protecting myself. I've already lost one person I loved. I didn't think I could survive losing another. He reached out and put his hand on the side of my face, thumb brushing the sawdust still on my cheek from the workshop. It was the first time he'd touched me like this on purpose. I don't know how to do this. I don't know what to tell Lily's grandparents or how to explain any of it to my daughter. But I know I don't want to do it without you. I covered his hand with mine and held it there. Neither of us moved. The birdhouse sat on the table between us like a promise we were both finally willing to keep. Lily came padding into the kitchen in her dinosaur pajamas, rubbing her eyes with one fist. She stopped when she saw me sitting at the table with Ethan, both of us still in yesterday's clothes, coffee mugs between us. She didn't say anything at first. She just walked over, climbed into my lap like it was the most normal thing in the world, and rested her head against my chest. You stayed. I thought maybe you wouldn't. Ethan reached across the table and put his hand over mine where it rested on Lily's back. He didn't pull away when she looked up and saw. He's staying, Bug. We're figuring it out together. Claire's parents sat on the couch like they owned the house. Ethan stood in front of them with his arms crossed. I stayed in the kitchen doorway where Lily couldn't see me from her room, close enough to hear everything. They talked about stability and tradition and what was best for the child. Ethan let them finish. Then he spoke in the same quiet voice he used when Lily had nightmares. Lily already has stability. She has a father who comes home every night and a man next door who built her a birdhouse with a porch because she asked for one. That's her family. If you want to be part of it, you can be. But you don't get to decide who else belongs here. They left 20 minutes later. Ethan didn't slam the door. He just closed it, leaned his forehead against the wood for a second, then turned and looked at me like he'd just won something bigger than an argument. The birdhouse was nailed to the fence post where Lily could see it from her bedroom window. She'd already filled the little porch with tiny plastic dinosaurs, so the birds have friends. Ethan and I sat on the back steps, shoulders touching. Lily was in the grass trying to teach a worm how to do a somersault. The sun was low and warm, the kind of light that makes everything look softer than it really is. I kept waiting for you to decide this was too much. The lie about Claire, the grandparents, all of it. I bumped his shoulder with mine. I kept waiting for you to tell me to leave. Guess we're both bad at giving up. Lily was in bed, T-Rex tucked under one arm, the dinosaur book I'd given her open on her lap, even though she was too tired to read the words anymore. Ethan sat on the edge of the mattress. I stood in the doorway like I had that first night, except this time, I didn't feel like I was trespassing. Can you be my mommy forever? She said it the same way she had the first time, like it was the simplest, truest thing she knew. Ethan looked at me over his shoulder. I walked over and sat on the other side of her bed. I can't be your mommy, Lily, but I can be your Owen. Every day. For as long as you and your dad want me here. She reached out with one small hand and grabbed two of my fingers. Ethan's hand found mine on top of the blanket. None of us said anything else. The ceiling fan clicked softly above us, the same way it always had. Outside, the birdhouse sat empty on the fence post, waiting for whatever came next. Inside, for the first time in a long time, none of us were waiting anymore.